We did a little poll at our parish here, and shockingly, we got the results back, and the poll was 100%. 100%. That never happens in polls. And what the poll revealed is that everyone at our parish either has or had a mother. Unbelievable. So anyway, I say that to honor the mothers who are in our midst. Happy Mother's Day. And obviously, all of us, because we have parents, we have really an incalculable gift that we can never say thank you enough, that our parents said yes to life and co-created with God, which is why we're here. And of course, the way that God has ordained things, women pay a higher cost in gestating human life. And so anyway, thank you to all of our mothers who are here. We have a special blessing for you at the end of Mass. Recently, I was on a plane, and I was reading a book called Rubicon by a British scholar named Tom Holland. Not the Tom Holland, the actor who plays Spider-Man, totally different guy, named Tom Holland, who is a British scholar. And I saw him in an interview about 4 months ago, and I was really intrigued by him. He's a classicist, which means he's an expert at ancient Greece, ancient Rome. And I was like, I'm going to read some books by that guy. So I went on Amazon, ordered some up. One of them came, and I started reading. So anyway, I'm on this plane, and it's me, then there's this woman, and there's a man at the window. And I'm reading the book. I go to use the restroom. I come back. She has now moved to the seat behind us. And so there's an empty seat, and then this guy. And so I finished the book while on the plane. And I'm a very slow reader, so finishing a book, such a feeling. So I finish the book, and I place it down in the seat between us. And I pick out another book, and I start reading that, and then the guy there says, "Hey, are you reading that book?" And I said, "No, I've read that book." And then he said, "That is one of my favorite books of all time." I said, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah." I was like, "Whoa." So we started talking, and we ended up talking for probably the next long time, like hour and a half. Nevertheless, in the course of this conversation, we were talking about faith and the Bible, and I was telling him that one of the reasons why I read ancient Greek and ancient Roman literature is because I want to know the world of St. Paul in the New Testament. And Paul is at least in 3 worlds, which is the ancient Greek world, the ancient Roman world, and the Jewish world. And so the more you know about those worlds, the more you know about St. Paul, who wrote 2/3 of the New Testament. Okay. So I was telling him about that and kind of different insights I've had from reading that. At one point he said, "Father, I don't know if I have faith." He said, "I have reason. And, God gave me a brain, so I feel like I have to use it. So I just can't have blind faith." And I said, "Well, I don't know if you know this, but what you just said is actually very Catholic." So Catholics believe that faith and reason are 2 harmonious paths to the truth. John Paul II once wrote a document about it, and he said faith and reason are like 2 wings that lift the soul to the contemplation of truth. You need both of them. And I said, faith is often commonly misunderstood today as being anti-reason. Like, I have faith, and that's so dumb, and I just have to go against what science says or what reason says. That's not how Catholics understand faith. We think that the God of faith is the God of reason, and that faith and reason, properly understood, never contradict each other. And so actually what you said is actually very Catholic. We believe faith is like a reasoned leap. There are things we can know about God by just using our intellect and thinking about the world, and there are things we know about God because he had to reveal them to us. But faith is never anti-reason, but it can be above reason. And he was like, oh. And when I said that, I was reminded of a quote. Now, this guy had no animosity towards the Catholic Church. He was married to a Catholic. He's raising his kids Catholic. But I reminded of a quote from Bishop Fulton J. Sheen. And you may have heard it. It's a classic. Here's what he said. "There are not 100 people in the United States who hate the Catholic Church. But there are millions who hate what they wrongly perceive the Catholic Church to be." Friends, that quote I have found to be true in my life dozens of times. People will meet me, "Oh, Father, I hate Catholics. Tell me more." and I go, because they believe this. I'm like, "Oh, would you like to know what we actually teach?" "Sure." And then I tell them, like, "Oh, that makes a lot of sense." And I'm like, "I know." This is what St. Peter says today in our second reading. "Beloved, sanctify Christ as Lord in your hearts. Always be ready to give an explanation to anyone who asks you for a reason for your hope. But do it with gentleness and reverence." Peter says this, always be ready to give an explanation. That word for explanation in Greek is apologia. Apologia. So we get the English word apology from. Now, oftentimes when we say the word apology, we think of like saying you're sorry for something, but the original meaning of the word, in Greek what it means, is a reasoned defense for what you believe. It's using argumentation or reason to give backup for what you believe. There's a famous document written in the early church by St. Justin Martyr, and it's called the First Apology. He's a Catholic, he's a follower of Christ, and he's not apologizing for his faith, he's defending it using rational arguments. And so that's what St. Peter's saying. He's saying all of us, as followers of Jesus, should always be ready to give an apologia. That's where we get the English word apologetics from, when somebody asks us the reason for the hope that is within us. And so I think what that requires of us is that we always have to be learning about our faith. And I found out some interesting things about Catholics. One of them is that there are Catholics that I met who are very smart. And they might be very smart and be very educated and have advanced degrees. But when it comes to their faith, they stop learning at about like a 6th, 7th, 8th grade level. Even though they might have like 2 master's degrees in like European history and economics. But they just stop learning about their faith. And that can be very devastating because we're commanded in the Bible to love God with our whole minds. Catholicism is a thinking person's religion. There is a lot to know about God, and there are brilliant people who are very holy and have written extensively about our faith. And so that begs this question, like let's say in the last 6 months, how many books about our faith have you and I read? How many podcasts have we listened to? How many YouTube videos have we watched that taught us more about our faith or about philosophy, theology, about general apologetics? Because it's so important that all of us are always growing in our understanding of the faith. And I've noticed that this drives me crazy. And it's one of the gifts, not a great gift, bitter gifts of the new atheists, which is they've convinced a lot of people that people with faith, people like you and me, were actually quite dumb. And we don't know anything about science or reason. And I've met people who have told me that. Oh, Father, I was raised Catholic, but I'm not anymore. Why? Well, I believe in science. Oh. That doesn't make any sense. Okay. A couple things, just real quick. The Catholic Church invented the scientific method. You're welcome. The modern university, they're all Catholic. They were attached to monasteries. When scientists would go out and they would make observations about the world and then write that down, that was called clerical work. Why? Because the people doing it were wearing clerics, because they're mostly priests and monks. You can just go home and type in Catholic or Christian scientists, and you will find dozens of them who made incredible discoveries about our earth, about our planet, about reality. Because Catholicism is a perfect religion for science. Why? Because we believe the world is made by a God who is reason itself. He's reason itself. So the world's intelligible and ordered. So you can find the order in the world. That's all mathematics is. It's just the language that speaks about the order that God has placed in reality. Whoa. And we also believe the world is not divine. We're not pantheists, so you can do experimentation on it. So our faith is actually perfectly suited towards science. But you meet people who believe faith and reason are opposed, or faith and science is opposed, and that drives me crazy, which means you and I, as followers of Jesus, need to know things about that. And you might have a pet interest in something like astronomy or biology or whatever it is. And it's just important that as you're learning about Catholic faith, to also just have a general interest in knowledge, because that validates or can sometimes, when we're meeting somebody who's anti-Catholic because they don't think we have reason or science, it's like, oh, this person actually knows things about science and the created world. It makes me more open to the truth of the gospel. One last thing I think that's a block for a lot of people is we fall into what's called the tyranny of the expert. Have any of you heard of Bishop Barron? Do you know who Bishop Barron is? You know who that is? Okay, yeah. He's kind of a genius. And he's a bishop, and he makes a lot of videos all over YouTube. And sometimes I think we fall in this trap. You watch a video by him, you're like, wow, that guy is smart. And I'm kind of overwhelmed by how intelligent that guy is. So I'm never going to be at that level, so I'm just not going to learn more, you know? It's the tyranny of the expert. But here's the problem with that. Bishop Barron doesn't go to school where you go to school. Bishop Barron doesn't work where you work. Bishop Barron doesn't live in the neighborhood that you live in. You live in that neighborhood. You go to that school. You work there. And you are called to be a witness and to always be ready to give a defense for your faith. That's what Peter says. And so we always have to be learning more about our faith because Christ is going to send people to us in our lives and they're going to ask, hey, why do Catholics believe this? And apologetics is the why behind the what we believe, and it's the why behind how we behave or how we live. It's so incredibly important. And what Peter goes on to say, he says, but do it with gentleness and reverence. And that word gentleness can also mean humility. In other words, we don't want to just win arguments. We want to win souls. And I know there's a temptation for all of us because we see those YouTube videos, so-and-so destroys so-and-so. Well, I got to click on that. I have to click on that. I want to see somebody get destroyed. So we live in a time that's very polemical and everything's political and okay. And I see people sometimes on the internet that I agree with in debates or argumentation, but their way they're going about it, I think, gosh, they may have won that argument, but they probably lost a soul. Somebody might say, oh, Catholics, they're pretty smart. They're also jerks, pretty arrogant and condescending. They're not that fun to talk to. And so we want to have both, of course. Why? Because God is truth, and God is love, and there's only one of him. And so if we're studying the truth through faith and reason, then we're studying the God who is love. So it wouldn't make any sense to preach the truth to someone, to do apologetics, and then to do it in a condescending way. Because then what God are we really proclaiming? The truth is not a weapon that I bludgeon somebody with. The truth is a person in Jesus who I'm introducing them to. So our wisdom should be invitatory, it should be inviting, not condemnatory. So all of us need to just always be conscious of that. Which is why, of course, the most important thing we can do is to pray every day. To know the heart of God as we're learning our faith, so that we have that heart towards other people when we encounter them. I just want to close by saying, in my experience, when I'm learning more about my Catholic faith, when I was in college, I worked at this Catholic bookstore, and I would read something random in the store. One time I read this pamphlet called, Why Catholics Baptize Babies? I was like, yeah, that's interesting, so I read it. And about a week later, somebody said, hey, are you Catholic? I said, yeah. They said, I just never understood why you guys baptize babies. I was like, would you like to know? Sit down. I had a Prezi. No, that's not true. But the point is in my experience, that's how the Holy Spirit works. That if you pray and you're always learning more about your faith, God will use it. How do I know that? Well, because 4 months ago, I watched a random interview on YouTube about a guy named Tom Holland. The actor? No, the scholar. And then I went on Amazon, I bought a random book by him about the fall of the Roman Republic. I was reading that book and wrote 26 on my American Airlines. I put that book down, and the guy there, who I've never seen before in my life, tells me that's one of his favorite books of all time, by an author I had never heard of 4 months ago. That's pretty wild. No, that's the Holy Spirit. And that opened up this encounter where I was able to do apologetics and evangelize and talk about Jesus. And that's true for all of us. If we know more about our faith and we're praying, God's going to keep putting us in those positions because we're called to love God not just our whole heart and our whole soul, but with our whole mind, so that we can be faithful witnesses of Jesus Christ.